Hello and welcome to another Paranormal Hunts podcast with myself, Mark, and we've got Lynda is with us again today. Today we are going to be discussing haunted objects and whether objects can really form attachments to them. So Lynda, get us started. Haunted objects. It's like most things in the paranormal at the moment. It's quite a big thing, isn't it? What's your personal preference on the haunted objects?
I'm torn on it because to me, if something's got an attachment, it's going to be something more personal, like a ring, a piece of jewellery, or family heirloom. Yeah. I think there's too many haunted dolls around, which are just gimmicks. Yeah. They're put behind glass saying, don't touch, don't touch. It's got a demonic attachment. Well, if it has got anything like that attached to it, a piece of glass is not going to stop anything.
Yeah. I'm the same. I'm the same with that sort of thing. I think if sometimes I think when I see them behind like pieces of glass and stuff like that, I think it's just like a scare tactic thing, and just to try and make people scared into thinking that this thing's really dangerous and we have to lock it in a piece of glass, which makes absolutely no sense because, like you said, if something's got an attachment to it, surely it can get through a piece of glass box. Do you know what I mean? So
well, yeah, it would, and a lot of it is the power of suggestion. Yeah, you put a sign on, say, "Do not touch this scratches" or this that puts that thought in your mind. So you could be doing an investigation and just accidentally rub your arm and scratch yourself, and the next minute you go, oh, "I've been scratched," because that suggestion has been put in your mind that object does that. Yeah, which I personally don't believe they can. I mean, yourself, we've got Ruby. Yeah. She's now in my house. Nothing's ever happened.
Yeah, and that's a good point you raised there. When we got Ruby, we got Ruby. Obviously, it came, with a thing. Apparently, it had some sort of an attachment to it. Obviously, we didn't buy it thinking this has genuinely got an attachment. It was more of a like a testing to see if this thing was, if these sort of things are genuine. And I'll be honest with you, nothing's since we've had it. It's just a doll, isn't it? It's literally just a doll. It's like there's no attachments to it or nothing. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It seems to be a big thing. I mean, I get like we've all got different opinions and stuff, which is fine. But I think you have to be very careful around certain things, like objects being haunted and they've got attachments and stuff like that. I mean, it's the same as when they say things can attach to us. I mean, how many investigations have we been on, and we don't do any like cleansing and stuff like that or anything like that. We just literally just rock up at a location, do what we've got to do and leave.
Especially like we've been to so one of the most demonic places in Britain. Nothing's ever happened. Yeah. Nothing's ever followed the same.
No, I know. And for me personally, I think that's what makes me think that I don't think this can be genuine. I don't think things really can attach to items or you or anything like that. I think it's just all part of something that's just been created within the paranormal world, within the paranormal community, just to hype things up and make things more that scary sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it came to the fore with Ed and Lorraine Warren and Annabelle, and then all the Conjuring series. Well, Annabelle was a Raggedy Ann doll that so-say had all this to it. And it's well known now that Ed and Lorraine Warren made a lot of stuff up. So now every Raggedy Ann doll, or you've got Robert the doll, which doesn't like being photographed without permission because something horrible done to you. You've got loads of famous haunted dolls. One up north, I'm not going to mention the name.
Yeah. No, I don't think, this isn't a show to mention names and start, pointing, certain places out and stuff like that. That's not what we do on here. So we discuss it and we can debate it and we can have our own opinions, but they are only our opinions. So, we're not here to name people and stuff like that and try and discredit people and things like that. If people are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and faking things, then they'll get found out eventually anyway.
Everybody's got their own belief system. Yeah. But there's so much of it about now. Everybody's got a doll behind glass and this, that and the other. And if things like that genuinely happen, it belittles the actual if there is such a thing as an attachment to an object, with so many people doing it, it belittles the actual truth behind stuff. So then what becomes real, what becomes fake?
Yeah.
You know, same as going back to the Annabelle doll. You know, things like that. Then it's made into movies, and a lot of it is for making money, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it makes sense, doesn't it? Because, you know, we already know that the paranormal was the community of the paranormal was getting bigger. And we've said this before on podcasts, you know, there's more teams that are coming to the forefront now. There's more people doing this and getting into this sort of thing. And there are other companies out there that are making money from this. And so it can become a big money spinner, especially for like people that are actually hiring out locations. They're the ones that are, you know, making a lot of money as well. You know, and that's obviously that's a topic for another day.
You know yourself, you can go somewhere and you can sense something's not right. Is it an object? Is it just the place? But up to me, personally, if anything's going to have any emotion or anything like that attached to it, it's going to be something that's personal, like a piece of jewellery that's been worn for a long time. It's not going to be a doll.
Yeah, and that would make more sense, wouldn't it? You know, if it was something more personal to you, you know, someone's ring that, you know, a grandma or something, or someone, you know, it belonged to somebody else that's now passed that you know, is related to. You could probably understand that more. But yeah, for me, a doll in a glass case does not scream to me like it's got any sort of attachment to it. I think it's all hyped up.
But then from a psychological point of view, if you use a doll that is a human figure, which people are going to more relate rather than, say, a ring, because our psychology, in fact, is the same as with pareidolia. You can see a face in anything.
Yeah.
With a doll, because it's a human form, you automatically associate it with a spirit because that human form is already there.
Yeah.
Whereas if somebody said to you, oh, this is a book that's got a spirit attached to it, people go, why would a book have a spirit attached to it? But with a doll, from a psychological point of view, because it is in the form of a human, people can relate to that easier.
I suppose it's the same as when you see, I see a lot more of them now as well, the clown ones. Yeah. You know, how many people are there that are actually scared of clowns or got a phobia of clowns? Yeah, so it makes sense to say there's an attachment to this because it just pumps up that fear even more in people. Yeah.
You know, you've got a doll, if that moved, because it's in a human form, you're like, your first thing is, that's haunted. Whereas a book on a shelf suddenly moved, you don't associate that having an attachment with it. You'd say a spirit moved it. It didn't have an attachment. Yeah. But if a doll moved, it's like, that's got a spirit attached to it, rather than it might have just been slipping over time with a small vibration.
Yeah.
But because it's that human form, people automatically are, that's got something attached to it.
Yeah, it's a very debatable subject, isn't it? And yeah, I just don't know. It's just something just doesn't scream right for me. With you know things having attachments to them. And maybe it's this whole thing that you know what I'm like. I have to see things to believe it, and like I've never seen or heard anything come from like an item or anything like that. You know, I mean, we went to a place recently, didn't we? Again, we won't name we won't name the location, but and that was that's supposed to be a haunted location with a museum, and the museum part has got like it's just full of dolls, isn't it, and stuff like that, and stuff like that, and that are supposed to all have some sort of attachment to them. But when we was there, I mean, nothing happened all night, did it? So with all that energy that would have been in there, that attached to all these items, you would have expected something to happen at some point during the night. But yeah, we didn't experience anything at all paranormal, and it was really weird because obviously when we was there and we got the kind of the walk around and the talk about certain dolls and certain objects and stuff, there was one particular doll, wasn't there, where the story was told to us about it, and it's that power of suggestion again, isn't it? It already puts it in your mind, oh, that this doll does that, and then there were some of us were drawn to this doll for the night, and some couldn't even look at it, and I don't think that's anything to do with it having any sort of attachment or anything like that. I think that was literally the power of suggestion from what we was told, because if we did that experiment again in a different location with a different item and we wasn't told that story, would those people have felt the same? And I genuinely think it was just literally the power of suggestion. It was just because we was told the story about this doll, about the attachment it has, about what it does, and then all of a sudden certain people became either drawn to it or couldn't look at it. And like I said, I don't think that's anything to do with it being, having any sort of attachment or being anything paranormal at all.
Not at all. Not at all. Psychological effects are so strong.
Yeah.
I mean, if you went into, places we've been, if you're not led to believe they were haunted and you didn't know they were haunted, you just walk into it like any other building because that's already placed in your mind.
Yeah.
And like with Hollywood and all the films they've done and all this, that and the other, more and more people now are doing these haunted objects, which there's no facts, there's no proof, there's no nothing. I get everybody has their own belief. But, I mean, you know me, I do believe to a point there's something out there, but what it is, I don't know. But you can't put everything down to, if an object moves, it's a spirit. It's behind a glass case, it's got chains on or whatever. If it was true, those cases or anything would never stop it, especially because most of them, it's either a little child or it's got a demonic attachment. If there was such thing as demons, because I personally don't believe there are, nothing is going to stop it. A glass case is not going to stop it. People say spirits walk through walls. They're going to go through glass.
Yeah, and just thinking on that, again, like I said, I'm not going to name locations, but there's been a location that's had an item within it that is supposed to have been haunted and have an attachment, and apparently this attachment has cried out to let him out of the box. Well, you shouldn't need to let it out. If it wants to come out, it'll just go out, wouldn't it? So it just doesn't ring right to me. And again, like I said, everyone's got their own beliefs, their own opinions on it, and that's absolutely fine. We're not here to discredit people or anything like that, or say that we are right and that they're wrong or anything like that. That's not what we're saying. But I just think, for me personally, it just doesn't ring true to me. And whether that's because, I need something to happen to believe it, I need to be able to see it or hear it or whatever it is, I need it to happen in front of my eyes for me to believe it. And, it's the same as when we go on investigations. Like, I'm very skeptical. Obviously I'm there to try and find out whether, this is true or whether it's not true. Either or, I want to prove one of those. Either this place is haunted and stuff does happen here and capture it, or actually, I don't think it is.
No. I do feel that objects not necessarily have a spirit attachment, but there is emotion, energy attached to it. Not an intelligent spirit, but sometimes, like, this is going to sound really bad, but something that's come from, say, a murder scene or a big accident or whatever, I feel that sometimes there is that energy left there from trauma or something major that's happened. I don't think it's an intelligent spirit. I think it's emotion or energy, whatever you want to call it, is trapped in that object from a moment of its release from whatever catastrophe or sudden emotions happened. But I don't think it's intelligent spirits that are in these things.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it makes sense, doesn't it, when they say, you die, you've got a soul, we are energy, aren't we? And does part of that or all of that remain, when you go, and that's where, I suppose the paranormal would come in. But yeah, I don't think it's a case of, something likes that object, so it decides to attach itself to it and doesn't go nowhere else. I just don't think that happens. It just doesn't make sense. Like it, and it is that whole, we've touched on it already. It being in a box, that just it just seems madness. It just don't, like, if there was something in a box that was supposedly dangerous and demonic or anything like that, and it's in a box to stop it from hurting you, if it wanted to get to you, it would just get to you, wouldn't it?
You've got the thing with the Dybbuk box, and now everything is a Dybbuk box, which got an evil spirit. Yeah. Well, the box is not going to stop it.
Yeah, and I think this is all come, like you said, it's not. Yeah, it's TV, and it's come from years down the line, hasn't it? From other people that have been in this field, and it's just something that's just gradually, it just gets passed on, and then it's just something that just keeps going. But yeah, I just think we have to be really careful when it comes to things like this.
And that's also something to bear in mind when we do our public events, is bearing it in mind when we've got guests. Because some people could literally, it could freak them out so bad if you told them this or that. Because their psychology might be to a point where, like, no, I'm not doing that, I'm not staying there. So even when we do, from our point of view, we are quite rational about stuff. But when you're doing it on a public event, if you're taking somewhere where there is haunted objects, you do have to rationalise it a bit with them before you start. Because if you let the walk around or whatever put things in their mind, your responsibility to your guests is keeping them safe, keeping everything rational, not let anything get out of hand. So you do have to play some of these things down to a bit, especially if you've got guests, because you don't know their psychology either. So you've got to be, from my point of view, you've got to be really careful if you're doing public events and easily noise it. Oh, that's that doll in that cabinet. Some people are going to get really screwed up by that.
Yeah, this is why, like, when we go on locations, I prefer not to know anything about it. When we've been to places before, haven't we? And they've gone, do you want to know the background and things that have happened and where things happen and stuff like that? And most of the time, we're like, no, we don't want to know. We'll just find out for ourselves. And I guess that's a good thing, really, because then if we get the same sort of things that happen to us that is happened to others, and we didn't know previously before we walked in there. And then I suppose you can, it's that whole triangulating in the evidence, isn't it? It's trying to back things up.
If you do know, then anything you see is going to be prejudiced by what you've already been told. You're not going to look outside that box of that stuff you already, no matter how sceptical you are, if you've been told something, that is going to be in your mind. So if you don't know and something happens, you're not going to automatically jump to, that's that doll in that case, or that's that boot over there, or that's that box, or
it's when they say like you can be in a building, they say, oh, that this room's the most active, this is where most of the stuff happens, that's the room everyone wants to go to straight away. And I just don't think, and when it comes to things like that, I don't think the paranormal works like that. I think spirits can obviously move around. They don't just stay in one room and like, this is my room, I don't go anywhere else, so I'm just going to haunt this room and everybody that comes in here is going to experience something. I don't think it works like that, but it's that power of suggestion again, isn't it? It's them saying, yeah, this is what we find is the most active room, this happens here, and this happens here, and this is the most quietest room. If they say to you, this is probably the quietest room where less happens, no one wants to go there straight away. And that is, again, it's that power of suggestion, and I think that we should bear in mind as well that is the same as haunted objects. When people tell you this particular object is haunted, it's in a box, it does this, you're naturally drawn to that, because that's kind of what you're in the business for. You want to see if these things are true. Does this thing scratch you? Does this thing speak out? Does this do whatever it is supposed to do?
Yeah, well, of course it was, because then it gets other people going back to see if it's true. Yeah, it's in my opinion, and if anybody makes a business out of the way they're doing it, like with these things, that's fine, that's their choice. But in my opinion, it's just a money making scheme.
Oh yeah, yeah. I agree. I think it's just a scare tactic as well, for locations, just to hype locations up and make them more attractive, so to speak. So, and that speaks volumes for the one we went to recently. And by no means am I saying the one we've just been to is not haunted. I'm not saying that, because we've only been there once. It'd be very unfair for me to sit here and say that place is definitely not haunted, even though we was there all night. And nothing happened. It would still be unfair for me to sit here and say that place is definitely not haunted. But in terms of like haunted objects, which is what we're talking about today, and the amount of haunted objects that they had at that location, some just randomly sat on shelves, some actually in boxes where you can't touch and stuff like that because it does this or it does that. With all those items and those dolls and whatever was in there that are all supposed to have attachments, with all that energy, you would expect something to happen. That tells me everything that I personally need to know, in terms of objects and whether they can have attachments and whether these objects are haunted and stuff like that. I just doesn't ring true to me.
I, as you know, I do believe in certain things, but I do not believe in haunted objects. For one, revisit my house. Two, we've got that Victorian pram that was given to us because it so say moves. Never moved.
Yeah, that's a good point, to be fair. I actually forgot about the pram, and that's because it's at your house and I haven't seen it for God knows how long. We had this pram off a lady, didn't we? That was wanted to get rid of it because wasn't it a daughter that said it rocks or moves on its own? So I was like, okay, that's fine. Obviously, we take that with a pinch of salt. I don't really believe that this thing rocks and moves, but I accept what they're saying. So we purchased this thing, don't we? This pram. We purchased this Victorian pram, which is now at your house. And we have tested it, and maybe we can do it again. Maybe that's another experiment for us to try and do. Because I think we only did it a couple of times, didn't we?
We did, because we used to bring it as a trigger object with Ruby sat in it. Yeah. So that's two things together. Yeah. Nothing,
yeah. And this thing's never moved once. Never. So I don't know.
Maybe it doesn't do anything because I don't have that fear factor.
Maybe.
You don't have that fear factor.
Yeah. Maybe. But I just don't know. It just doesn't ring true to me. Obviously, I accept people's opinions, and if someone thinks that a certain object is haunted, fine. But the ones that we've tested, that are supposed to have an attachment, and there's been absolutely nothing from them.
I mean, everybody's experience is individual to them with certain objects, but until I see it with my own eyes, and I don't mean it just falling off a shelf or moved a little bit along the floor, because that could be micro vibrations that have moved it. It's got to move with a defined purpose.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, like when we had the pram at, where was it, the community centre, and we had the little trigger light ball on top of the pram, on like the hood bit, and it fell off, and everyone thought, "Oh, that was great," and for me, it's not. That's just it fell off. There's people walking around, there's people moving, there's traffic outside, cars and buses and stuff that are driving past. All those vibrations are going through that floor. Even if you can't feel it, they are, which would cause that ball just to roll off naturally. It's just a natural force, so for me, I just don't think this really can be true. I mean, if anybody can prove me wrong, then by all means, please do. I'll be happy to test any haunted object. I don't care how demonic it's supposed to be, because I truly don't believe it.
But you see, Mark, we did put that post out. Has anybody got any haunted objects? Yeah. Not one reply.
And for me, and again, I'm not calling these people liars, but for me, the reason I think nobody comes forward and wants us to test these objects out is because they know it's going to be proven wrong, because it's not true.
I honestly, I do believe in certain things, and I believe there is some out there, But I personally don't believe a spirit can attach to an object and stay with this object. Why would it?
Yeah, no, I just don't. Yeah, it doesn't ring true to me. I just don't. There's. I look at the evidence. What evidence is there out there? And the ones that we have seen, we know is all fake. We know it's all fake. I mean, like, and most of those ones are on TV, so they only show you what they want you to see. You know, we've touched on this before about, you know, things being edited in a certain way, sound effects being added in. You know, they go, oh, this baby's crying, and they're just adding in a baby crying sound into the production. It's a simple thing to do. I could do it. You know, but people fall for this sort of stuff, and it's like I just don't understand it.
You know, so you've got people that are not easily tricked by a scam or everything. Then you've got people that fall for every single thing going, time and time again.
Most of the people that, you know, believe these sort of things that they see on the TV, you know, look, there's noises coming from this doll. Can you hear this? Did you hear that crying sound? Yeah, that's a sound effect that you added in, mate. That's nothing to do with the doll. But the people that believe this sort of thing are usually the people that have never been on investigations before, so don't even know what investigation's like. You know, how many times do we have to tell, like, guests when they come on ours, you know, that have probably not been on ones before? Sometimes we ask, don't you, if anyone's ever been on one before, and the ones that say no, the first thing we say to them is like, it ain't what you see on the TV. If you've come here thinking that that's what's going to happen, you're going to be very disappointed, because that's not how it works. That's not real. That's not how the real paranormal works.
I mean, if there is such a thing as spirit, and I do believe there is to a certain point, but whatever evidence you truly get is going to be very subtle.
100%. Everything is always subtle.
Yeah. You're not going to have things flying across a room. You're not going to have doors slamming. With haunted objects, if you're told something in a room is haunted, you might hear a subtle knock or a noise and that. You're going to automatically think it's this object when it's probably something totally natural. So you've got to be so careful. You know, even if somebody tells you this object does this, that, use your rational mind. Yeah. Don't believe everything you're told, everything you're seen. You know, for example, when my youngest was young, we had some ornaments. There was one ornament he was terrified of because he said it turned around and looked at him. Now, if I was somebody that believed in all that stuff, I think, oh no, I've got a haunted object in my house. But no, it's probably because he'd watched something on telly that was a cartoon or something and just associated it with that. And in his own little mind, it's like, oh, that looks a bit creepy. I mean, my house was creepy, but, you know, but out of all of these ornaments, they're all very similar. There was one object that he was terrified of, and we had to turn it around the other way and put it in a cabinet. But how often do you remember as a kid there was one thing that always scared you, but you never knew why? You know, so to me, that was just a child's mind, child's imagination. You know, he was scared of Bully on the telly from Bullseye. You know? But you get so many people that say, well, this object's this object. But it's that in your mind. Not saying you've got a mental illness or anything like that. But because people have been brought up now, especially with TV, with movies, like the Conjuring series and all this stuff, and Annabelle, they're so quick to jump now, oh, I've got this, or they'll say, how many people do you see on eBay, you see on all that, haunted dolls for sale? How many left? 10. Well, they're not blinking haunted, are they? If you've got 10 left, they're not haunted, and you're selling them for hundreds and hundreds of pounds. It's a money-making scheme.
Yeah, I mean, we've looked before. I mean, we got Ruby off eBay, didn't we? And they literally just all they do is they just put in a description about the things that have happened and, you know, who Ruby is and stuff like that. And obviously, we know it's not true, but we bought Ruby with the intention as an experiment to see if these things are true. And I don't even think we paid a lot of money for her. I don't even think we paid a tenner for her, to be honest. So. You know, but yeah, you're right. You see some on there that are like, you know, from 50 quid upwards, like some are like 100 quid, 150 quid, 200 quid.
And then you look at it and it says, oh, 10 left.
£200 for a doll because you're saying that there's something attached to it. Like, you have literally zero evidence to back that up, and you're expecting people to part with 200 quid and just believe what you're saying.
You know yourself, I've got some dolls at home, right? I bet you, if I invented a story and put it on eBay, I'd get loads of money.
Yeah, you probably would. Somebody would buy it.
Of course I would. Because because of even the way YouTube is, the way television, the films, people are so ready to jump to believe. So it doesn't matter what it is in life. If there's a market for something, it will be sold and people will buy it.
And that's the thing, people are seeing a market. And the market is coming from where they're seeing that the paranormal is becoming such a big, popular thing now. The more people watch it on TV, more teams are coming together and forming and starting to go out on investigations, whether that's just as a team or whether they start public events like we did. But you're seeing a lot more of these teams popping up now, and the paranormal's becoming bigger, and there's more people in it, and so people are seeing that as an opportunity. It's a market that's open, and they're like, we can make something from this, because these sort of people, not everybody, but there'll be a percentage of those people that will believe these sort of things that you tell them, and they'll just buy the object anyway.
And again, that's why a lot of these locations are now having haunted museums with them.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, like we've already touched on it on this podcast. The last one we went to, that for me kind of seals it, because there was just, I mean, how many objects were there? There was hundreds, wasn't there? There was hundreds in there, and they all had some sort of attachment. Because they bought it off somebody that had said that it was haunted, that it had this attachment, that it does this and it does this. So, I mean, if that was true and that was the case, with all that energy that's flying around in that room, there'd be you'd always have stuff happening. And for us, we went there. All right, we've only been there once, and it was one night. I accept that, but you would have thought something would have happened during that night with all that energy flying around, and we had zilch. So for me, that just seals it, and I just think, this can't be a real thing, and people are just seeing this as an opportunity to put a fear factor into people and make money.
Which, it's a business opportunity, people are going to take it. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, if it isn't true and these things are made up to put in a museum, you're falsifying stuff. And it's not doing the real paranormal community any good.
Yeah, and I don't think this is a topic that we'll disagree on, is it? We've both got the same sort of view on it, and I'm sure we'll cover topics, subjects that we won't necessarily both agree on, but and we'll have our own opinions. But I think in this case, for like the haunted objects one, I think we can both safely say that we're on the same sort of page with it. So yeah, I don't think there's really much else we can really cover on haunted objects. I mean, we've kind of been through it, with our own opinions, and our opinions are quite the same, really. So yeah. So I think we'll end our podcast there, Lynda. It's been another great topic. I mean, we've got some more coming up soon, haven't we? We are going to be at the Folly Tower, I believe, again for the next one, aren't we? So we'll be recording another one then. So thank you guys for everybody listening in, or if you're watching as well, thanks for watching and listening, and we will see you again on the next one.